On my pearl anniversary, my husband's ex-wife, who had been in prison for 30 years, suddenly knelt before him, begging for forgiveness. Marcus's eyes reddened. At the globally broadcast ceremony, he publicly declared, "I have prepared my will. Upon my death, all my assets will be inherited by my ex-wife, Valerie." I grabbed his hand, about to question him, but Marcus slapped me away. "I've worked my entire life to accumulate this wealth. I can give it to whomever I please. Who are you to dictate terms? Dare to say one more word, and you can rot in the nursing." As he spoke, he ripped off my haute couture gown and, with eyes full of tenderness, draped it over Valerie, trembling as he helped her to her feet. Watching the two embrace and kiss passionately, I casually tossed away my wedding ring, the one Marcus and I shared, and stood firmly before the cameras. Marcus has no reason to exist anymore. Marcus? Go home and farm with Valerie. Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. The venue fell silent for a moment, then erupted in laughter. Grace must have lost her mind. She's just a kept woman, living off Mr. Marcus. How dare she bark orders like that? Oh, you wouldn't understand. She sponged off him for 30 years, she must have developed a taste for being tough. Listening to the mockery erupting in the hall, I felt only a faint pang of bitterness. Back then, Valerie had sold Marcus to the black market, where he suffered endless humiliation. It was I who pulled him from the abyss. Later, Valerie sneaked into my home, stabbed Marcus nearly to death, and then set the old ablaze. It was also I who desperately rescued him from the blaze and rushed him to the hospital. Valerie was arrested and imprisoned, leaving behind a shell company on the brink of collapse and billions in debt. Creditors came knocking, demanding Marcus as collateral. It was still I who used half of the household's assets to help him pay off the debts, revitalize the company, and propel him to his current position as CEO. Yet, in the end, Valerie merely shed 2 tears, and all my 30 years of sacrifice were to be given away to her by him. Fine. If he doesn't appreciate what I've given him, then he gets nothing at all. Live comments scrolled frantically across the broadcast equipment, but I sharply caught one. "Oh, Ms. Grace, at your age, how can you let a junior step all over you? Want me to come back and back you up?" I smiled. I never thought there'd be a day I needed my own daughter to back me up. Reaching out, I called for my assistant, Ethan, and whispered in his ear, "Did you hear what was just said? Within 12 hours, take back everything I've given Marcus over the years. And get rid of all his people in the company. Also, Luna should come home. Arrange for someone to pick her up." Ethan nodded in affirmation, then helped me to my feet and began to lead me out. Unexpectedly, Valerie's voice, full of provocation, suddenly rang out from behind. "Ms. Grace, please don't be offended. Marcus and I haven't seen each other for many years." We were swept up in the moment. "But you, with no reaction at all, is it because you also have a younger man by your side?" The hands that were supporting me suddenly tensed. Ethan turned his head, his voice suppressing anger. "What right do you have to speak? Intentional murder, malicious arson, 30 years in prison, wasn't that enough to reform you? Or are you specifically trying to malign Ms. Grace to balance Marcus's guilt?" Valerie fell silent, but Marcus charged straight at me, grabbing my arm. "Aha. Grace, no wonder you don't want me to leave my assets to Valerie. Are you planning to use my money to support this younger man?" Ethan sneered beside me. "Your money? Don't forget, everything you have today was given to you by Ms. Grace." Marcus instantly flew into a rage. "She gave it to me? My company was clearly left to me by Valerie. She only invested a little money because she saw its potential. The company's earnings have supported her for all these years. I'm simply trying to return what's Valerie's to her. What does Grace have to be unhappy about?" Of course, I was unhappy. This new company, which I painstakingly revitalized and restructured into a powerhouse, had nothing to do with the mess Valerie left behind, except for the name. Yet, he could say the word return with a clear conscience. If we're truly tallying, he owes me much more. I lowered my gaze to the list of Marcus's trusted aides on my phone, and replied coldly, "Get rid of them all." Seeing I remained silent, Marcus raised an eyebrow and spoke with even more self-righteousness. "Valerie just got out of prison and has nowhere to live. Give her that villa at Summit, and I won't hold this against you." I laughed in exasperation. A villa at Summit was worth all of Marcus's current fortune. Indeed, he only remembered he was my husband when he wanted money from me. I looked up at Marcus and sneered. "Marcus, you've got some nerve. What's next? Are you going to ask for all of Grace?" I fought for half my life in the business world, building Grace into a global empire and making myself the wealthiest person. Marcus was too ambitious and proud, so to accommodate him, I concealed my identity and became a leisurely old woman enjoying a quiet retirement. But that made him forget that if I could help him rise to prominence overnight, I could just as easily make him fall into disgrace. Marcus seemed not to have expected my attitude, and his face gradually reddened. Grace, when you die, won't Grace be inherited by me, your husband? Why shouldn't I ask you for it? Grace has its own heir, and it has absolutely nothing to do with you. I coldly interrupted him. Furthermore, you are no longer my husband. Tomorrow morning, I'll see you at the county's office. With that, I left Marcus stunned and walked out of the venue, leaving the entire audience in a daze. Ms. Grace, you just mentioned an heir, Ethan tentatively asked me. I chuckled lightly. I'm talking about Luna, my sassy girl. It's been too long since I sent her abroad. I've wronged her. Too, Mom. Do you even realize how wrong Dad is? No sooner had I spoken than my son, Dylan, spoke from behind me. Turning around, my daughter, Sophia, who had come with him, immediately took my hand and said in a sweet voice, Mom, you and Dad have so many years of history together. Aunt didn't mean it. Why go as far as divorce? Aunt? Sure enough, even after 30 years of bearing my surname, it couldn't compare to the bond of his birth mother's blood. I pulled my hand away and looked at him coldly. Since your dad and mom still have feelings for each other, what's wrong with me granting them their wish? Sophia suddenly realized her slip of the tongue and opened her mouth to protest. But interjected, Mom, they were just swept up in the moment. It's not a huge mistake. If you insist on making such a fuss, where will Dad put his face? And I have to say, you're an adult, why are you throwing a tantrum and talking about divorce all the time? I was so exasperated I laughed. Truly's biological son, his words were identical to his birth mother's. When married me, bringing along his 2 stepchildren, and Dylan insisted on keeping Valerie's surname, I should have understood then. How foolish I was to dedicate myself to both of them, never depriving them of food, clothing, or expenses. Sophia loved piano, so I spared no expense to hire the most esteemed masters to teach her. Dylan was passionate about finance, so I used my connections to arrange an internship for prestige on Wall Street for him. And my own daughter. Yet, in the end, the moment their birth father appeared, they became unable to distinguish right from wrong. Even 2 dogs would know who to bark at by now. But it's done. When have I ever changed my mind about a decision? I caressed the imperial jade inlay on my cane, its cold touch mirroring my tone, and can come to the county's office with your dad tomorrow and change her surname back. The household has no descendants like you. TSK, Ms. Grace, they say people get soft-hearted in old age. How is it that your heart has grown even harder? Valerie's voice suddenly came, full of mockery. I turned my head and saw Marcus nestled in Valerie's arms. Sophia immediately stepped forward, linking her arm through Valerie's, tears welling up. Mom, she's set on divorcing Dad. Dylan also stood silently beside them. The sight of this family of 4, a picture of domestic bliss, was truly jarring. But it didn't matter. Soon, they would all have nothing. My phone vibrated twice in my pocket. I picked it up and saw a message from my daughter, Luna, Ms. Grace. I'm back. Hey, not bad, you even arranged someone to pick me up. Just wait, I'm coming to back you up. I looked up at Ethan, meeting his gaze. Ms. Grace, all funds from Marcus have been verified and reclaimed. Bankruptcy proceedings are underway. Out of the corner of my eye, Dylan, holding his phone, was showing something to Marcus, whose expression suddenly changed drastically. Marcus's face was ashen, and he lunged at me, screaming hysterically, Grace, how dare you touch my company? Isn't it enough that you falsely accused Valerie, causing her to unjustly spend 30 years in prison? Now I just want to compensate her, and you're so jealous you want to destroy everything? His eyes were fixed on me, full of hatred, his chest heaving violently. Sophia and Dylan rushed forward to support him, glaring at me. Ms. Grace, you've nurtured us for so many years, but wasn't it all for your own clear conscience? You selfishly possessed us for so many years, deceived us for so many years, and now you're trying to force us to our deaths? I felt utterly absurd for a moment. As I looked up, my gaze met Valerie's curved lips. Yes, these stories old only have been fabricated by Valerie. How ridiculous that Marcus and his 2 children would trust Valerie, the scoundrel who had so wantonly harmed them. I reached out to stop Ethan, who was about to argue with them, and said with a calm, unwavering voice, you reap what you sow. You, furious, Marcus raised a hand to slap me, but Valerie, stepping forward, caught his arm. A fake smile played on her face. Ms. Grace, I specifically asked the children to talk to you. why won't you listen? Now that things have escalated like this, it's really hard for me too. No sooner had she spoken than a screech of tires against the pavement came from behind. Bang! By the time Ethan and I reacted, we had both been hit, sprawling to the ground. Excruciating pain shot through my entire body, and my consciousness began to blur. When I reopened my eyes, the heavy scent of rust filled my nostrils. I forced myself to move despite the severe pain, only to hear a clanging sound. It was then I realized that Marcus and his family had locked me in an iron cage, put a collar on me, and fastened me with a heavy chain. Unending humiliation surged through me. The next second, a strong smell of smoke invaded my nostrils. Dallery's contemptuous voice drifted in, "Ms. Grace, now let's discuss the matter of Grace ownership." Indeed, she had revealed her true intentions. I struggled to lift my head and saw Marcus and his family of 4. Dallery, with a cigarette dangling from her lips, squatted in front of the iron cage, her eyes full of mockery. But looking around, I didn't see Ethan, who had suffered this undeserved calamity with me. "Where's my assistant? What have you done to him?" I asked, forcing out the words. Dallery was the first to laugh, turning to Marcus, who still looked startled, and taunting him, "Look, this is the old woman you insisted on not letting me kill directly. Her assistant handles her business, and when there's no business, her assistant handles her too. Even half dead and just waking up, she thinks of her little assistant. What about you?" The hint of evasiveness and hesitation in Marcus's eyes instantly erupted into intense hatred. "Grace, are you really that concerned about that younger man?" I found it laughable. "If I'm not concerned about my loyal subordinates, should I be concerned about you, an ungrateful backstabber? Subordinate?" Marcus laughed somewhat maniacally. "It's come to this, and you're still pretending to be so virtuous for?" He clapped his hands, and soon a bodyguard dragged Ethan, covered in blood, into the room. He threw Ethan into the center of the room like trash. I narrowed my eyes, fixing my gaze on him. "Everything you've endured for the household, I will ensure you are fully compensated for, eventually." Ethan forced a smile, trying to reassure me. Dallery, hearing my words, burst out laughing. "Ms. Grace, you can barely protect yourself right now. What are you bluffing about?" She then turned to Sophia, smiling maliciously. "Didn't you tell your mom you were interested in this young man? Mom will teach you, go sleep with him now. Men, once they've slept with you and you've asserted dominance, they'll be devoted to you." Sophia looked at Ethan, lying helpless at someone's mercy on the ground, swallowed, and, as if led astray, walked towards him, reaching out her hand. Feeling her predatory gaze, Ethan struggled to twist his body, gritting his teeth and stammering, "You, don't come any closer, Sophia. Think carefully. If you touch me, the household, Luna, will not let you get away with it." Luna's name struck like a thunderclap, freezing Sophia in place. Immediately afterward, deep fear appeared on her face. At the time, I sent Luna abroad not only to prevent Marcus from worrying but more to protect his family. Otherwise, they would eventually be destroyed by Luna. But was oblivious to their fear. She walked over to Sophia with an exasperated look and slapped her. "Worthless trash, you. Can't even be taught." She then grabbed Ethan's hair and viciously tore off his lower garments. Then she dragged Dylan over, forcing his body down onto Ethan's. Madness consumed her thoughts. In that moment, she couldn't control herself anymore, acting purely on instinct. Pieces of clothing flew through the air. I could no longer suppress my rage. "Ethan was sent by Luna to look after me. Their bond is deep. Can you bear the consequences?" Marcus involuntarily trembled and rushed forward, pulling Sophia off Ethan. He said in a deep voice, "If returns, everything will be ruined. Keeping these two can still tie her down. Now, we must quickly seize control of Grace." Marcus looked at Dallery, more resolute than ever. Dallery instantly erupted in fury, grabbing an iron rod and smashing it onto me in a fit of rage. My vision went black, intense pain assailed my consciousness, and a metallic taste filled my throat. Before losing consciousness, I watched them leave the basement, slamming the heavy iron door shut. For when I opened my eyes again, the hospital's fluorescent lights stung them. A voice, both strange and familiar, came from beside me. "Ms. Grace, if you'd woken up a moment later, Marcus would have already used your death certificate to divide up all of the household's assets. Can you still move? Come see how I, your biological daughter, finish them off." Luna's words were laced with suppressed fury. I understood clearly that what made her so angry, besides my previous predicament, was Ethan's terrible condition. I struggled to sit up. She rushed to help me, and my hand instinctively gripped hers. "How is Ethan?" Luna's breathing instantly grew heavy. "He's fine. I've settled him in." Seeing me nod slightly, she continued, her voice now tinged with iciness. Marcus and Valerie forged your will and death certificate and arranged a press conference. If we go now, we should just make it. News of the press conference will certainly disrupt the company. You need to go to the company first to reassure everyone. I patted Luna's shoulder, my voice calm. I'll go to the venue first. Once you arrive, our mother-daughter duo will finish them off together. Are you sure you can manage, Miss Grace? Don't let them bully you again before I even get there. She was sharp-tongued, but she still handed me the formal wear she had prepared. When I arrived at the press conference, Marcus had already eagerly moved up the time. The entire venue was abuzz with discussions about my supposed death. I stood outside the door, caressing the green imperial jade at the top of my cane. I quietly listened as Marcus, after feigning sadness for a while on stage, cleared his throat. My wife, Grace, also the chairwoman of Grace, left a will before her death. Bang. I pushed open the door and slowly walked forward, speaking as I went. When did I die? How is it that even I don't know? The entire venue fell instantly silent, then erupted in chaos a second later. Media reporters present all aimed their cameras at me. But in most people's eyes, doubt still flickered. Only on stage turned ashen at the sight of me. Valerie beside him instantly gritted her teeth, clenching her fists. Dylan and Sophia were completely flustered the moment they saw me. Especially, who was trembling like a sieve. Sophia, however, gritted her teeth and rushed towards me, grabbing my hand and pleading frantically, Mom, you know I didn't do anything. Now that you're fine, the inheritance certainly won't go to Dad and Val. Valerie, but there's definitely a share for me, right? I looked at the greed in his eyes, which outweighed any regret, and coldly shook off his hand. There will only be one outcome for your family of 4. You know it in your hearts. Ignoring, who had collapsed onto the floor, I continued to walk towards the stage. With each step, Marcus's face grew paler. Valerie, however, her eyes darting, immediately shouted, Martha, have you been a stand-in for Ms. Grace for so long that you can't get out of character now? Mr. Marcus personally saw Ms. Grace breathe her last. You jumping out now, are you trying to seize Ms. Grace's family assets? As she spoke, she covertly poked Marcus with her elbow, giving him a fierce look. Marcus finally composed himself and then shouted, Grace, the wealthiest person, worth a fortune. Even if you risked your life for her, the household never treated you poorly. Why choose this moment to twist the truth and attempt to seize my ex-wife's assets? Whispers rose from the crowd, they seemed to be accepting the couple's explanation. I looked at Marcus with a sneer and scoffed, Marcus, my standing here today is your last chance. Too bad you don't know how to appreciate it. Valerie, sensing the shift in the crowd's mood, stepped in front of me and lowered her voice, keep pretending. With you, a lonely old woman, you're nothing but a worthless life. As long as everyone outside believes us, what could you possibly do to turn things upside down? Bang! The venue door was shattered by a Bentley. The next second, fully armed elite bodyguards surrounded the hall. The car door opened, and Luna stepped out, her voice cold and sharp, then I, Luna, will turn it upside down for you to see. 5. The deathly silence at the press conference was utterly shattered by Luna's resonant and impactful declaration. The flashbulbs flickered wildly again, but this time, the focus was no longer on the ill-fated couple on stage, poised to inherit a fortune. Instead, it was on the shattered doorframe, bearing witness to a brazen act. And on my son, Luna, who after years away, now stood like a drawn sword. Valerie's triumphant expression and Marcus's feigned grief instantly froze. It was as if someone had choked them, their faces turning a ridiculous purplish red hue. Valerie instinctively recoiled half a step, her eyes utterly terrified. Marcus abruptly stood, his fingers trembling as he pointed at us, Hurley exclaiming, are you human or ghost? No. Impossible. You clearly already done and by you, right? Luna sneered, taking my arm, and walked us, step by step, through the automatically parting crowd towards the main stage. Her posture was as if strolling through her own garden, but her sharp eyes, inherited from her mother, gleamed with a cold light. No one dared to meet her gaze as she passed. Mr. Marcus, Ms. Valerie, it seems the people you hired aren't very skilled at their jobs. You're rushing to celebrate without even knowing who's dead or alive. Ethan followed behind us, expressionless, and took out a tablet, quickly operating it a few times. The venue's massive LED screen instantly changed, beginning to loop surveillance footage and audio evidence. It included our abduction, the location of our captivity, Valerie and Marcus's conversation fragments discussing how to forge my death certificate and how to divide up Grace assets were crystal clear. The audience erupted in uproar. Their previous sympathy, pity, and even some admiration for Valerie vanished instantly, replaced by shock, anger at being fooled, and the excitement of a juicy scandal. Reporters, like sharks smelling blood, locked their cameras onto the two ashen-faced individuals on stage. Faked accident. Illegal detention. Property conspiracy. A reporter shouted out the keywords loudly. No. This is fake. It's fabricated. Grace, this old hag, is framing us. Valerie jumped up as if burned, vehemently denied everything, trying to block the screen, but it was futile. Her composure, her hypocrisy, were torn to shreds in that moment, leaving only the desperate lashing out of a cornered animal. Marcus was completely dumbfounded. He looked at his own greedy, calculating face on the screen and listened to his own cold, heartless voice, his body tottering. He seemed unable to comprehend why everything he had meticulously planned had come crashing down in such a way. P.S. Uddenly looked at me, his eyes filled with disbelief and a betrayed anger. Grace, you actually plotted against me like this? I looked at him coldly, the last faint ripple of sentimentality, born of 30 years together, completely settling in my heart. Even now, he still believed I was the one in the wrong. Luna clapped her hands, drawing everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, guests, I apologize for interrupting this memorial service. Her tone was mocking, but her gaze cut like a knife across everyone on stage. Let me officially introduce you to Mr. Marcus, my father, who is alive and well. As for these two on stage, she paused, her gaze finally settling on the ashen-faced Marcus and the Valerie, who was in a frenzy. Mr. Marcus, a CEO who flourished for 30 years under my father's patronage, conspired with his ex-wife, Ms. Valerie, who was just released from prison with a history of heinous crimes. They planned and carried out the kidnapping and illegal detention of my father, and attempted to forge a death certificate to unlawfully seize all of Grace's assets. As for the evidence, besides what you've just seen, the police have even more detailed information. As if to confirm her words, at the entrance of the venue, several uniformed police officers, accompanied by lawyers, silently walked in. At the sight of the police, Valerie completely broke down. Her 30 years in prison seemed to flash before her eyes, fear overwhelmed everything. She shrieked, "It wasn't me. It was all him. It was Marcus's idea. He forced me. I don't want to go back to prison." She tried to push all the blame onto Marcus, even reaching out to shove him. Marcus stumbled, pushed by her, and looked incredulously at the man who, just minutes ago, had passionately kissed him and vowed to give him a happy second half of his life. Dylan and Sophia in the audience were also stunned. They rushed onto the stage, wanting to support their mother, but then were bewildered by their father's despicable behavior. "Valerie, Marcus's voice was broken. "Shut up, bitch. If you weren't so useless, unable to handle Grace, we wouldn't be in this situation." Valerie cursed wildly, tearing off all her disguises. The scene was utterly chaotic and disgraceful. Luna watched the farce indifferently, nodding slightly. The police quickly moved forward, displaying arrest warrants. "Ms. Valerie, Mr. Marcus, we suspect you are involved in a case of kidnapping, illegal detention, document forgery, and attempted murder. Please come with us to assist with the investigation." The moment the cold handcuffs clicked onto his wrists, Marcus seemed to lose all his bones, collapsing to the ground. He looked up, his gaze piercing through the chaotic crowd, fixated on me, his eyes filled with despair, resentment, and a belated fear that finally seeped into his bones. "Grace, you're so cruel, 30 years, do you have no sentiment left at all?" His voice was hoarse, as if making a final accusation. I finally stepped forward, looking down at him, my voice calm yet loud enough for the entire room to hear. "Marcus, when you agreed with Valerie to target my life and Grace Foundation, there was nothing left between us but a reckoning, no sentiment left. Take them away." I nodded to the police. The police led away the completely distraught and incoherent Marcus and the struggling, roaring, utterly disgraced Valerie from the press conference venue. Only the flashbulbs followed their disheveled figures. 6. The press conference ended in an unprecedented scandal and farce. Luna, Ethan, and I didn't linger, leaving the venue immediately. The air outside seemed much fresher. Sitting in the car, Luna stretched her long legs, tilted her head, and her playful expression softened slightly. "Ms. Grace, are you all right?" "TSK, if I'd known that woman was so crazy, I would have come back sooner." I looked at the rapidly receding streetscape outside the window and slowly said, "Without going through this, how else would I have completely given up hope? Some walls, you only turn back from after you've hit them." Back in the Grace top floor office, Ethan immediately brought the latest report. Ms. Grace, the police have officially opened a case. The evidence we provided is overwhelming, including location data of the kidnapping, testimonies from the guards, recordings of their contact with people forging documents, and transfer records. It will be very difficult for Valerie and Marcus to escape conviction this time. The legal team estimates that, convicted on multiple counts, the minimum sentence will be over 20 years, likely life imprisonment. I nodded. This was just the beginning. Regarding Industries, due to a complete break in its capital chain and involvement in huge debts of unknown origin, it has officially entered bankruptcy proceedings. All assets previously under Marcus's name, including real estate, stocks, and funds, have been frozen and will be gradually reclaimed. Ethan continued his report, his voice steady and calm, as if discussing a trivial matter. But these were the very things Marcus had valued as his life and tried to use to compensate Valerie. I responded, what about Sophia and Dylan? Ethan paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Sophia and Dylan tried to come to the company to see you, but were stopped by security. They also went to the police station, hoping to arrange bail for Mr. Marcus, but were refused. Currently, they appear to be living in a cheap apartment Valerie had rented. I closed my eyes, imagining their panic and helplessness. 30 years of privileged life had long since stripped them of their ability to live independently. Moreover, they had never truly seen their birth father for who he was. Mom, Luna spoke, her tone carrying a hint of imperceptible tentativeness. What do you plan to do about those two? I opened my eyes and looked at her. This son, whom I had consciously or unconsciously neglected over the years due to my busy career and because of Marcus and his 2 children, even sending her far abroad under the guise of training, was in fact a way of distancing myself. Yet, she had returned without hesitation in my most critical moment. Grace has its own rules. I said calmly, since they chose to side with Valerie and Marcus, chose to question my 30 years of sacrifice, and even tacitly allowed them to harm me, they must bear the consequences of their choices. Didn't Sophia want to change her surname back to Zhang? Let her have her wish. From now on, they have no connection to the household. I won't pursue them to the bitter end, but I won't offer any further assistance either. Whether they rise or fall, that's up to them. Luna seemed relieved, grinning, that's how it should be. Ms. Grace, you're finally being tough for once. I was worried you'd be soft-hearted. Soft-hearted? My soft-heartedness had already been shattered by that slap and those cruel words during the globally broadcast ceremony. It had also been eroded by their murderous intent in that dark prison cell. 7 in the following days, I swiftly and decisively reorganized Grace. Marcus's confidants and Deadwood, whom he had embedded in the company, were systematically purged by Ethan, leading the audit and compliance departments with swift and decisive action. Those who deserved prison went to prison, those who deserved dismissal were shown the door. Grace, this massive machine, quickly shed its corrupt and redundant parts, resuming efficient operation. I also formally signed documents, publicly declaring Luna as the sole heir of Grace, and began to gradually transfer power to her. Although was irreverent in her speech, she had inherited my capabilities and acumen. In fact, she was even more perceptive than I in finance and new technologies, and the entire group quickly came to respect her. During this period, I received countless calls pleading for leniency. Some were from so-called old friends, some from distant relatives of Marcus's family, and even a few supposed celebrities. Their words were invariably about the difficulty of 30 years of affection. The children are always innocent, and forgive and forget. I replied coldly to all of them, affection? When they laid hands on me, did they remember any affection? Innocent? They are not innocent when they enjoy a life built with my money, yet help their birth father plot against my life and assets. Leniency? The law will give them justice. All calls eventually ended sheepishly. Until one day, my assistant said Dylan and Sophia, or rather, Sophia. They were once again creating a scene downstairs at the company, claiming they wouldn't leave until they saw me. I instructed security to let them up. The office door opened. In just a few days, these 2 once glamorous young people had become haggard and worn, dressed in cheap clothes, their faces marked by alarm and a final glimmer of hope. Mom, Dylan began, his voice hoarse. Ms. Grace, I corrected him. Dylan's face paled, and Sophia burst into tears. Mom, we know we were wrong. Dad and Mom, no, and Valerie, they were just led astray for a moment. Please forgive them. You can't be so heartless. We have nothing now. Our house has been repossessed, our cards are frozen, we don't even have money for food. What are we supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? I looked at them, my heart utterly numb. You have hands and feet, and the excellent genes Valerie and Marcus gave you. Surely you won't starve on the streets? An elite from Wall Street, a favored student of a piano master, you surely won't die in the streets. My sarcasm made their faces even uglier. But, all of that was, Dylan tried to argue. All of it was bought with my money, I interrupted him. Now, I'm not willing to buy it anymore. Do you truly have no sentiment left for us, your children? Sophia was crying in floods of tears. If it had been before, I might have felt a pang of tenderness, but now, I just found it laughable. When you called her aunt, when you stood by their side and accused me of selfishly possessing you, our bond was already broken. I pressed the intercom. Security, please escort this gentleman and lady out. From now on, they are not allowed to step foot in the Grace building without an appointment. The security guards entered and expressionlessly escorted them out. Dylan tried to struggle, but the security guards unceremoniously held him. Sophia, meanwhile, looked at me with a gaze filled with almost hatred. Grace, you'll regret this. You're cold and heartless. You'll die a miserable death. Their curses faded as they disappeared into the elevator entrance. I turned and looked out at the bustling city. Regret? My greatest regret was being soft-hearted back then, accepting Marcus and his 2 children, while neglecting my own flesh and blood. The case proceeded quickly. The evidence was conclusive, an overwhelming amount of it. Although the defense lawyers for Valerie and Marcus argued strenuously, their efforts appeared weak and ineffective in the face of the complete chain of evidence. In court, Valerie pushed almost all the blame onto Marcus in an attempt to get a reduced sentence. She claimed she was merely manipulated and coerced by him, even tearfully describing how painful and regretful her 30 years in prison had been, asserting that she was just led astray for a moment after her release. The extent of her despicable behavior made even the judge frown repeatedly. Marcus, on the other hand, went from initial breakdown and denial, to silence, and finally, by the last court hearing, he had become numb. He listened as Valerie completely absolved herself of all responsibility. He watched his daughter in the audience, who had long reverted to her maiden name and whose face showed resentment due to her difficult life. And his son, who was shifty-eyed and seemed to be weighing the pros and cons, watched as the light in Marcus's eyes gradually extinguished completely. On the day of the sentencing, I went to court. The final verdict: Valerie was sentenced to life imprisonment and permanent deprivation of political rights. Marcus, also convicted on multiple counts, was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The sound of the gavel falling was crisp and cold. Valerie collapsed on the spot and was dragged away by the bailiffs, muttering curses about Marcus being a scoundrel. Before being led away, Marcus suddenly turned, searching the spectator seats, his gaze finally landing on me. That gaze was incredibly complex. There was regret, despair, pleading, and emptiness, eventually leaving only a bleak, lifeless emptiness. He parted his lips, as if to speak, but no sound emerged. Instead, 2 lines of muddy tears slowly trickled down his face. He had finally paid the price for his folly, greed, and callousness. After 30 years of marriage, the last pearl anniversary gift I gave him was handcuffs and 20 years in prison. I watched expressionlessly as he was led away, my heart completely serene. Stepping out of the courtroom, the sunlight was a bit dazzling. Luna was waiting by the car, handing me a hot coffee. All resolved? Yes. I took the coffee, took a sip. The warm liquid dispelled the last trace of gloom from the courthouse. Good, let's head home then. Maria made your favorite dishes. She opened the car door for me. The car slowly pulled away from the courthouse. On the way, I saw Dylan and Sophia standing on the street corner, disheveled and distraught. They seemed to want to see the verdict but dared not enter. Seeing my car, Dylan instinctively tried to step forward, but Sophia firmly held him back. The 2 of them simply watched the car drive away, their gaze a mix of fear, resentment, and a hint of pleading. In the rearview mirror, their figures grew smaller and smaller, eventually disappearing into the bustling traffic. From then on, they were just strangers, having no longer any connection with Grace, or with me, Grace. Oh, by the way, Grace, Luna said seemingly casually, as she drove, I've transferred the villa at Summit into your name. It is good feng shui, suitable for retirement. It'll save you the annoyance of seeing certain things. I paused slightly, then chuckled. That child. That was one of the tokens of our love I had given Marcus, and the very villa he had righteously demanded from me to give to Valerie. Now, it had returned to its original owner, but things were different, people are changed. Okay. I nodded. The car drove towards the Grace household, where there would no longer be false pretenses, no more scheming and plotting, only my true, rediscovered kinship and peace. The wedding ultimately ended with the pearls tarnished and completely shattered. But it was precisely because of this shattering that the truly brilliant, indestructible essence within was revealed, the genuine mother-daughter bond that belonged to Luna and me. Thanks for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section. Feel free to share your opinions, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.